Hey everybody, Matt from Redpaw here. Thanks for buying the DIY MYOG backpack tutorial. What I'm going to be doing in this tutorial is step-by-step instructions of how to make the backpack from start to finish. I'm going to try to spare no detail and in fact give some tips and tricks to make the whole process easier so that you can get more efficient and make less mistakes on this sewing project and all your future projects. So you've downloaded the video and you've downloaded the pattern. What's next? What I recommend that you do is to go to a local print shop and print out this pattern on a wide format printer. That's going to save you a lot of headache. That's only going to cost you about $10 to $20. I also recommend the cheapest paper possible. The reason for that is this is just a temporary pattern. I'd expect that you use it 1 to 3 times max. And if you were going to continue using it beyond that, you would transfer to a more durable pattern paper. So with all that said, I definitely recommend the print shop option as opposed to printing at home. You can definitely print at home on a home printer, and I've done that before, but for some of these larger pieces, it's definitely going to be a pain. If you are going to print at home, what I'd recommend you do is you tile and collate the pages so that way you can cut out on the lines and match up, tape, and piece together all those pieces. So that is actually the free option, but that said, I recommend you go and spend that $10 to $15 and get it done on a proper printer paper size. That's going to make sure everything is the right size. There's going to be no chance for mistakes. So that is definitely the best option. This backpack that we're going to be working on is going to be approximately 30 liters. It's going to have the dimensions of 11-inch width along the back and the front, a 5.5-inch depth, which will be on the sides. We'll have side pockets, which will have cinch channels at the top for elastic cord and cord lock, so you can tension them and hold your items inside. And we'll also be adding Grosgrain loops all over the pack so that you can easily add cordage, attach things that you want, add a sit pad to the back panel, etc. So I think this will be a really great multi-use backpack that is as simple as I could make it, and it will definitely be durable too. All right, so now that we've got our pattern all printed out onto this 3-foot by 4-foot sheet of paper, it's time to cut out all of the template pieces. And what I'm going to suggest you do is to remain consistent with your cutting. So what I'm going to recommend is you cut on the outer part of the black lines. That'll make sure that you get the exact right size for each piece. Our next step here is we're going to line up all of our panels just so we can visualize everything. I think this is an important part of the process because once you see all the pieces laid out, you're gonna start to figure out how these pieces are gonna work together and all be joined together at the end. So there we are. There's all of our pieces. And our next step is we're going to put this onto the fabric and start marking and then cutting it out. So normally at this point, I would say roll out your pack fabric that you're going to use for the entire bag, excluding the parts that will have stretch pockets or that are the foam or 3D spacer mesh if you choose to do that. So what I'm going to do is I personally am going to try to use as many scraps as I possibly can to kind of make this bag look visually appealing for the video. So it's going to be a little bit different of a workflow, but if you've ordered your fabric and you've got a yard and a half of it, that's what I recommend you do is you start with the pack fabric first. That'll be the easiest and it will get you nice and used to working with placing weights onto the templates and marking and then cutting. So that's what I'm going to do, but I'll be using a bunch of different fabrics. So keep that in mind as you watch me make mine. So generally speaking, for these cinch channels, it's nice to have a fabric with a little bit of give. And what I mean by that is you need something that's not necessarily super stiff. So X-Pack will work for this. Plenty of companies use X-Pack for cinch channels on side pockets, but I'm going to be using Dyneema X-Grid or HDPE Grid Stop. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow the side pockets to cinch a little easier. So my first step is to hold down the pattern as well as I can, and then I'm going to use my chalk pencil and begin to mark it just on the outsides. Now this is such a small piece that you can't really use a weight for it unless you have specific weights. So it doesn't matter, just hold it in place, mark it down. So that'll be our first cinch channel. Take our scissors and we'll just go ahead and cut that out. Definitely take your time when you're cutting. This isn't a great time to make any mistakes, so you definitely want to try to be accurate as you can. It won't show in the final project if you make mistakes. However, if you compromise the durability of your fabric at this stage, is definitely a no-go, and you're going to want to start again with a new piece. So something to keep in mind. Cinch channel number 1. All right, now for our next trick, we're going to be taking another scrap here, making another cinch channel. Again, place it down. You don't need weights, but you could use a ruler for this, and in fact, I'll demonstrate that. So it's always nice to have a couple different rulers at your disposal. This is an all-metal ruler. What that's going to do is it's going to weight down the material as I'm working on it. So I'm going to pick one side where the ruler is going to overlap because the ruler is longer than the piece, but then I'll just place it down, and that'll do a nice job to keep it in place while I mark the outside with chalk. All right, that's marked. Now time to cut out the second cinch channel. Again, definitely take your time with cutting. It's worth it for the final product. All right, so now our cinch channel piece is complete, and we'll put that off to the side. Now our next piece, got some VX21 here. And our next piece is going to be this small strap anchor. This is going to be the part that attaches with a piece of webbing to the bottom of the shoulder strap with the ladder lock adjuster. So this is already the right size. So we're going to go ahead and place it down. Mark it up. And we're going to do both in this purple color, just because this size is just the right size. All right, now both of those pieces are done. Take our strap anchor, put that over to the side. Now, this will be our next part here. So this is Lightskin LS21, and this is going to be one of our side pockets. Now that we're working on bigger pieces like this, it is definitely a nice thing to be able to weight down your material. So this is about exactly the right size, which is amazing. We're going to go the other direction. So now we're laying down our first side pocket panel, and it's definitely nice to have the weight, because what it's going to prevent is when the fabric is being marked, it'll prevent it from moving. So if the material is moving while you're marking it, you can definitely get uneven lines or just frustrating situation in general. So it's easy to use these weights and to avoid that complication overall. And it's not super important with these super small pattern pieces like we're doing right now, but it will be whenever we're doing the big pieces like the back panel, the front panel, and the side panels. All right, one side pocket done, put that to the side, move our scraps. Then for our other side pocket, I'm going to be using this X50 multicam. I have this left over from a project where I made a mistake, so it's pretty much just been sitting around until now, so I feel like I might as well use it, and a great spot to use it is definitely the side pockets where there's going to be a lot of abrasion. All right, that's our second side pocket. Move that to the edge and begin cutting it out. Second side pocket done. So if you look at all of our pieces so far, we have our two side pockets, our two anchors for the straps, and then our two cinch channels for the top of the side pockets. Okay, now we're going to move that out of the way and start the next pieces. Next thing is we're going to take our shoulder strap anchor piece, and we're going to place that onto the material. This is X-Pac VX25, so it's a little bit heavier duty than X-Pac VX21. The reason I chose this is a spot that's going to be important for the durability of your shoulder straps, so I recommend you pick something a little heavier. And the reason I'm using chalk as opposed to any other method of marking, which could be a pencil or Sharpie or whatever, in my experience, using chalk is great because it marks easily, especially on these technical fabrics, and it comes out very easily. All you need to do is wipe it with water. So if you make a mistake with marking, you don't have to worry about it, whereas with the Sharpie, you're definitely going to be seeing those lines on the inside of the pack if you're not careful. So that's something to keep in mind and why I use a chalk pencil. It's definitely not a requirement, but for me, when I'm making a bag for a customer, I think it's really important not to have the chalk lines and Sharpie lines at the end of the project. Okay, now that that's cut out, excuse my messy piece, what we're going to do is we're going to take the pattern part here, the actual pattern itself, and then we're going to do a fold. Let me take you down here so you can see on the edge of the table. So our fold is going to be right at this half mark. So what I'll do, and something I generally like doing, is take the corner of a table and use that to make your press onto the material and to start the fold. Once it's started like this, then you'll very easily be able to take it up, fold it over, and press down hard. When you press down hard, it's going to make sure it stays in that position, just like that. Okay, so then we're going to start on these next folds. Start at the sides and the diagonal. This is where the shoulder strap is actually going to come out of the pack itself. So there's one. And there's two. Okay, so we made it to this point. Now we have one more fold to make, and it's the very top. Again, you want to try to fold it as cleanly as you can, right on the line. And we're good. Okay, so then, here's what we're going to do. We're going to unfold the part we just did, stick this piece up here, and what that's going to do is it's going to give us a part to mark on the material itself. So we'll have marked at the 1/2 inch, another at the 1/2 inch. Grab your ruler, line it up, mark it. Now this isn't necessarily required, but it's definitely helpful. It's going to allow you to do this fold later. Okay, now that you have that done, unfold the bottom fold on the pattern piece. Line that up approximately with the bottom. Make sure the top is folded. All right, great. And just like that, we're going to mark again. Now this is definitely something you want to do with chalk as opposed to Sharpie. This is definitely a part of the pack that will be visible, so keep that in mind. You can definitely avoid this step, the marking, if you don't have a chalk pencil, but it definitely will make it easier once we're putting the final assembly together. Okay, so there you have it. There is our shoulder strap anchor piece. All these lines will be where we fold. So we're going to put that off to the side, put this pattern off to the side. All right, so now we're going to begin and cut out the front and back panel. This is going to be the back panel, which I'm going to make this teal VX21. So drop your weights onto it and move it into the position. Try to line it up on the raw edge of the fabric if you can, provided that the raw edge isn't going to fray. On this X-Pack VX21, it's a pretty solid edge, so it's not really something to worry about. Let's go ahead and mark it with the chalk pencil. It's definitely nice to have a huge work surface like my tables here, but you can definitely do this on the ground. I've made plenty of packs just sitting on my floor and doing this exact same process. So if you don't have the infrastructure, if you don't have the double tables and a huge flat spot, you can definitely still get away with this. All right, move the weights and our template piece here. Perfect. And now we're going to begin cutting. It's definitely nice to glide with the scissors if they're sharp enough, and if you trust yourself enough doing that while cutting, it's definitely faster. It's really important to have sharp scissors for this part of the project. Definitely fabric-only scissors is a huge advantage here, but you can use any household shears. It doesn't really matter what you use as long as they're fairly sharp. All right, so while we're here, I'm also going to cut the bottom panel piece. Stick that down, drop some weights on it, keep it in place. Next, we're going to do our shoulder straps. Normally, I would recommend a woven fabric like the HDPE Gridstop or otherwise, but it's definitely not a problem to use a heavyweight, non-stretched sailcloth material like X-Pack VX21. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make these out of the black Saray VX21. I think that'll be a nice subtle look on the straps, whereas the rest of the bag is going to look pretty bright. So that's what I'm going to go for here. Again, just hold it down, weight it if you want to with a ruler, or your other weights if you have them handy. But I'm just going to hold it, mark it. Okay, that's one. Now what you're going to need to do is a reverse of that exactly for the other side. So this is going to be our left strap, flip it over, then you're going to make your right strap. Great, that's pack fabric for the shoulder straps. Time to cut. So for our next piece, the front panel, I'm going to be using this gray Topo V21RS. It's essentially the same as VX21, but this is printed with ripstop by the roll. They do a custom design with the Topo print, and this is also a slightly different fabric in that it just has a square grid reinforcement versus the diamond 22-degree ply of the VX21. So I think this will be a nice little contrast for us because we're going to have an orange stretch pocket on the front. I want it to be as colorful as possible, but also each panel as different as possible. Great. We're all marked. Now we're done with that piece, and it's time to cut it out. And front panel's done. Now we're moving on to the side panels. We're getting close to done with our pack fabric pieces here. And definitely recommend putting weights on this one. It's kind of a long, skinny piece, so it's gonna move. It's not as stable, so definitely worth putting some pieces down and keeping it in place. This is hunter green or forest green, I'm not sure which, VX21, so it's same fabric as most of the other parts of the bag, but it's just a nice muted green color. All right, pull that piece out. Let's cut it out. Side panel done. Let's grab one more fabric and then we'll be done with the side panels. If you know me well, then you know that I was definitely going to have to pull out the orange. And here we are. We're going to do at least one side panel orange. And I think some of our stretch pockets orange as well. Notice that this is definitely a wasteful way to mark this material because there's a lot of excess hanging off. I'll still use it. As you can see, I use all the scraps. So keep that in mind when you're doing yours. You definitely want to avoid situations where you are going to create large off-cut sheets from your roll, but it doesn't really matter for this project. We're just going to have fun. So we're going to stick with this orange just because it seems like it'd be add a little extra fun to it. Definitely won't get lost in the woods with this. So this next part I've listed as optional for the pattern, but I think it's actually a really important step. So what we've done is we grabbed our 3D spacer mesh. This will be the back side, the underside of the shoulder strap. So it's nice to have something that is a little softer than, for example, like our X-Pack fabric when it's touching you. And a lot of people tend to say, oh, this isn't necessary, it adds weight. I think it does add a little bit of weight, but for a decent amount of comfort. So I always opt for using the spacer mesh. What we've done is we've taken our shoulder strap pattern and we're going to do one marked part facing up and another reverse mirrored so we get the other side of the shoulder strap. All right, take that, flip it over. Definitely remember to flip it over. Don't make the mistake and have two of the exact same side, and you'll only be able to make one strap. And you definitely need two straps to make a good backpack. All right, both pieces done. Now we've moved on to our stretch fabrics. So what I'll be using is this orange Spandura. This is what I offer on my site. I think it's a really, really awesome stretch fabric. They claim it has a blended nylon, Cordura, as well as spandex, so it has a ton of stretch while also being very durable. So yeah, I definitely recommend this stuff. I think it's perhaps one of the better stretch fabrics out there. It's definitely not perfect. It'll absorb a little water, but dries pretty quick. It's been durable to boot. I've had absolutely no holes or problems with that at all, so I definitely recommend using it. Now, because this stuff is a little tricky, all stretch fabrics are a little tricky, it's definitely going to move while I'm working on it. That's something that you just kind of have to accept. So what I've done is I've decided to switch over to my chalk wheel here. The chalk wheel is one directional in that the wheel's spinning, but it marks the stuff way easier because it grips on, as opposed to the chalk pencil where you're just pushing it around. So this is a little bit easier, not a required tool. Heck, you still use a Sharpie for this stuff. Remember, use whatever you have and whatever cheap tools you have lying around, whatever's free, because that's always gonna be better than spending money on something if you're just getting into this hobby. So this chalk wheel is a great upgrade for like $7-8. Definitely helps with stretch fabrics, but if you're not doing this all the time, really not something to worry about. All right. That's our front stretch pocket done. We're also going to do our bottom pocket now too. And I'm going to try to line this up with the line from the other one so that there's less cutting, just to save a little time, a little fabric. Line it right up onto that other line and start marking. This is our bottom pocket piece. Very nice. Almost done with all the cutting. One more thing after this. You can use a rotary tool on this, and that might actually be a little quicker for you, a little more accurate, but I definitely prefer to use scissors still, especially when I'm not cutting a bunch at once. All right, done with the stretch fabrics. On to the very last piece to cut, and that's going to be our foam. So take your shoulder strap foam template, mark that up. This is on a 1/2 inch closed cell foam. You can use whatever thickness you want. You can even buy Coleman, Walmart camping pads and use that. That's how I made my first few packs. You get like an entire roll of closed cell foam for about $8 to $10. I think that's a great starting point if you're looking to just get started here and not spend an arm and a leg on a big roll like this. Not that this is really that expensive. It's probably $200 for all the stuff you see here, so it's not terrible, but when you're just starting out, definitely consider buying something really cheap, a camping pad. Just make sure that's closed cell foam. It's not going to absorb any water. Even the Walmart foam that I've used doesn't really compress on the shoulder straps over time. It's actually decent stuff. You'd be surprised. So it's teal, it's green. That's the one that I've purchased from Walmart in the past. Buy it on Amazon, whatever. I'll have links to a lot of this stuff and other parts in my videos where I have Amazon affiliate links, shopping lists, so that you can buy this stuff pretty easily. So as you can see, we're now done with cutting. We've cut every single piece. What I'm going to do next is just lay everything out. Make sure that's all there before we begin the sewing portion here. So we've got our front and back panels, bottom, side pockets, cinches for the side pockets, the anchors, shoulder strap anchor, bottom again, side panel 1, side panel 2, large stretch pocket and bottom pocket, and then our shoulder straps over here. And that is our 3D spacer mesh, our 1/2 inch foam, and we've got everything. So now we're ready to start sewing. All right, so now we're ready to begin the actual sewing portion here. So our first thing is look at your machine. Is your machine ready to go? Do you have a fresh bobbin? For me, I do. I have a full bobbin. That's a good start. Okay, now do you have a needle? Do you have a size 16 to 18 needle? That's what I definitely recommend. And in terms of thread, I also recommend you use a Tex 40 like Mara 70. I'm using a V46 thread. It's just a bonded nylon sold in a big cone. That's definitely the cheapest way to buy threads, but if you're just starting out, get a spool of Mara 70 and call it a day. It's good stuff. So our first bit here is we're going to mark 1 inch on both sides of our cinch channel here. Okay, great. Now, take a ruler. Great, so now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple folds here. So I'm going to grab a couple clips, and we're going to fold right on that chalk line. Now let me illustrate this real quick before we do it. The reason we're doing 1-inch folds on each end is to finish the ends. This is a 10-inch piece, or 11-inch piece, and I believe that the side pocket is just a little bit shorter. There's the 10-inch side. Okay, great. I'm gonna hold this up to it. That's approximately what we're looking for. A little bit of a gap right here, a little bit of a gap right here. And that's going to give us space to do what we need to do with our cinch cords. So for this, we fold on that 1-inch mark, and then we're going to do a second fold. So this will be a 1/2-inch rolled hem. Doesn't have to be super precise. The most important part is that you fold it on that 1-inch chalk line to begin with. And just like that, we're done. Okay, now we're doing it to the other side. Perfect. And we're going to begin sewing. Now my foot on my sewing machine is automated. What you're going to want to do for sure is to do back stitching. Mine will do automatic back stitching, as you can see. So definitely do a locking stitch to start. Go slow if you need to. Finish with another locking stitch. My machine also cuts the thread for me, but you're going to have to take some thread snips and cut it. That wasn't the best looking seam, but we'll just clean it right up. All right, done. On to the other side. Thread snips are your new best friend. Okay, great. So that one's done. We're going to repeat the same process on the other one, so I'll just do it quickly because I've already explained it. Do our folds here. Fold 1 on the chalk line. Fold 2. These clips will do amazing things. You can use pins, but on these tech fabrics, it's definitely better to be using the pin, or to be using these clips over the pins. The reason is we're making a bunch of holes with sewing already. You want to reduce the amount of holes that you're making in the entire project if you can. So using these clips will eliminate those, and it's going to give you a much more durable, better outcome. So there we go. Both of our cinch channels are done. So for our side pockets, we're going to have two sides here. One is going to be 8.5 inch and one is going to be 10 inch. The 10 inch side is going to be for the horizontal part of the side panel. This is going to be the height. So the shorter end will be the height. Now, what we need to do, actually do the opposite. What we need to do is place these pieces next to each other, and you can see we're going to have about a 1/2 inch on both sides of the side pocket. So we're going to need to mark that. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Okay, so that is where these should approximately line up. The cinch channel with the pocket. Doesn't have to be perfect, remember. This will all look great whenever you flip it inside out, so small little details aren't necessarily the first thing to worry about. I'd say it's definitely more important to get your first pack done out of the way, and you'll realize what small details you want to change later. So now I'm going to start sewing the channel on here, and we're going to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So you can do this if the throat plate of your machine doesn't have any measurements to figure out the seam allowance. You can easily just put a ruler up to it and mark it with a pencil. So here's our 1/2 inch mark, and here's our 3/8 inch mark. So what that is for me is right on the outer edge of the grooves here. So I'm going to take my fabric, put it onto the machine, lift the foot, and begin. Now remember, we have right sides to right sides, and you want to put the folded channel on the inside so that it is not shown, so that it'll be a much cleaner look. Start with the locking stitch. And do your best to line it up with your 3/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to be using 3/8 inch for most of this project, so that's something to keep in mind. All right, now that that's done, we're going to flip this up and fold down. You can start to see where this is going to come into play here and make a little bit of sense. We're going to keep that nice and folded. If you're using X-Pack, it'll crease really well, which is a great thing. Then we're going to take our pieces here and line it up just like this. Now, it may be difficult to do this the whole way across, so it may be advantageous to just hold it while you do it as opposed to clip it, and that's what I'm going to do. But I think it's nice to start out with the clips. Gives you a great place to start. Okay, so remember, pull these taut. Put this down, start stitching. Definitely go slow. This is going to be nice to go slow and get an accurate line because this will be a visible part of the bag. This will be on the side, so definitely take your time and try to get a good outcome here. Doesn't have to be perfect because this will be the inside. All right, and there's our first part there. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to do another reinforcing stitch, and we're going to do it a lot closer to the edge of where the fabrics meet here, so right along those lines. And this is something you can just eyeball. You don't have to measure anything. The reality is you really can eyeball a lot of these parts of projects where measurement just really isn't required. It can definitely help if you're trying to reproduce things, but if you're not, you can just eyeball it and that will be good enough. So there we have it. There's our cinch channel on the top of one of our side pockets. Now we're going to repeat and do the exact same thing for the other side. All right, now we're on to the other side. Again, find your right measurements, 10 inches across. Then we're going to take our cinch channel after we have marked 1/2 inch, both sides. Remember, that's just a little reminder. It doesn't have to be exactly on there, but it's definitely helpful. Take our right side to right side, line it up, and there we are. That's pretty good. I'm going to take it back to the machine. Remember, 3/8 inch. You can definitely go without being strict on your seam allowances, but it's a good practice to have because it'll help you with your measurements and for making your own pieces later. All right, now that we have that, remember to fold. The fold will definitely help you out here, and then take our cinch channel, line it up best we can. Line up best you can on both sides, both ends. It's going to be a little tricky here, but go slow, do your folds. Important thing is doing the fold right. Now, is there another way you can clean this up, make this a little better? Yeah, definitely. You could definitely add some ribbon. You could employ a different stitching technique, but this is simple and it works, and that's why I've chosen it for this project. Okay, very nice. Stitched on there well. Then we're going to take our second stitch around. Remember to go close as you can practically. Excellent. So now second pocket's done, and we're going to move on from these pockets. Our next step of the process here is we're going to cut out our webbing. So I'm going to start out with the 1/2 inch webbing. We're going to need 2 10-inch pieces. Now, I wouldn't say that this is a mandatory step, at least not right now. It definitely is a nice thing to do, but take a lighter and singe the edges of all the webbing. It's going to prevent fraying, and it's going to be a really nice way to finish everything very easily. If you don't have a jet lighter, use a regular Bic lighter, and that will work just as good. All right, so for our next bit here, we're going to line up our side pockets with our side panels. And the best way to do that is to take a corner like that, line that up, drop some of these on there to hold it together. And then we're going to do a tack stitch into place. And what that means is we're just going to be at the farthest right point here, close to the raw edge, and it's done. It's on there. That's what we need for now. Okay, then we're going to go to our other side. We're going to do the exact same thing. Line it up best we can. Do another tack stitch close to the edge. Great. So then that is what we're working with here. Then what we can do for a visual here is we can decide to mark at just 3/8 inch right here on both sides, because that's going to be our seam allowance. So we just want to make sure that we don't hit the 3/8 inch mark. We'll make sure we're below that when we do our pleats, which is next. So our pleating will go as follows here. We're going to basically hold it in our fingers and try to roll it. You want to try to get an even roll on both sides, and you're going to want to come pretty close to that 3/8 inch line. I mean, not too close, but close enough that your pocket will be as big as it possibly can be. And that looks pretty good to me. Looks about even. See what we did here with our fold. So all we're doing is making sure we're not on the 3/8 inch line, which is where our seam allowance will be. And then we fold it twice for the gussets. So then we're going to put that under the machine. Don't worry if little bits don't line up or the bottom side panel fabric is showing through. That doesn't matter for right now. Our next bit here is we're going to add the 1/2 inch webbing. That's a 2.5 inch loop. And if you can fit it inside of your channel, that works great. Should at this point. And so then you're going to stitch it, tack stitch onto the side panel right here. This is going to hold our shot cord for later, so it can be tucked in, and we can also pull it out. So I think that'll be a nice little addition for us. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Great. Now Now that's done, our side panels are done for the most part here. At least our side pockets are. Great, that fits in just fine. Perfect, now we're gonna do the other side. So now that we've got our side panel and the pockets, we're going to line up here, do some clips all along the sides. And then we're going to do a tacking stitch to keep it in place right here on the side. As close to the raw edge as possible. Okay, that's one side. And we're going to do the same for the other. Line up the corners here. Doesn't matter which side is down on the machine as long as everything is lined up correct. All right, great. Then we're going to do some marking here. We're going to go to 3/8 inch again, just to have that little boundary for ourselves to make sure we don't go over into our seam allowance. Okay, so we've done that mark. And we're going to do a fold. We're going to do our pleat here. The best way to do this, take your fingers and try to make an even fold on both sides as good as you can while being close to the chalk line but not touching it. So that should be good. That should be good too. So as you can see, we are not touching the chalk lines, but we are fairly close. We want to be as close as we can so the gusset on the pocket is bigger. Now we're going to tack that in place. Making sure nothing is moved. My stuff moved, of course. There it is. Great. So that is going to be our pocket. Now we're going to add our 1/2 inch pieces of webbing to either side. Remember, that'll be right here, and it's going to fit into the channel. This is why it's important to follow the seam allowances, is so that you get a nice tight fit here. And we did. Okay, great. Now that that's in, tack that on, done. Go to the other side, grab the other piece. Slide it in. It's a very tight fit, but it's going to work. Ideally, you do get a tight fit with this. Okay, perfect. Now that we're in position, tack on. So now we have 2 completed side panels and side pockets. Now we're going to move on. Now we've got our anchor points. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold it right here in half. We're going to take our piece here, give it a nice fold, line up the corners. We're going to take our 19 inch piece of webbing, slide it through. Then we're going to line it up at the top and give ourselves 2 3/4 inches of excess webbing coming out the right side. Put it under the machine and do a stitch. Great. Now that we've got that, we're going to take it, flip it, line up these edges again, drop another clip on there. Try to do as many clips as you need to keep everything in place. Then we're going to do a top stitch over the part that we just folded. Perfect. Then we're going to do our box stitch, and I'm going to start on this edge. Do a straight line across to that corner. Lift the foot. And then we're going to go diagonally very slowly to make sure that we Get a nice diagonal stitch here. Let the foot, flip it, go straight along this edge. Flip it again. And we're going to complete the box stitch with one more diagonal right here. Perfect. And that's it. Now the next thing that we're going to work on is our stretch pocket. So we're going to mark 1 inch on the short side of the bottom pocket just to set ourselves up here for a nice rolled hem. So start out here, 1 inch, 1 inch, okay? Take our ruler, and we're going to mark all the way across. Perfect. And we're going to do the same for the other side for our large front pocket. It's going to be 1 inch. This is the front panel large stretch pocket, so keep that in mind. There's only 2 stretch pieces on this pattern. Okay, and then next what we're going to do is we're going to take ruler, 1 quick line across. It's definitely nice to use chalk for this reason. It's going to be a little more difficult if you don't have the chalk to get a perfect line that will just go away after you're done using it. It's about good enough there, okay? And then we're going to take our clips and we're going to fold right here on the 1 inch line. Right here. Cover my clips, of course. I'm going to fold on our 1 inch line and then do a second fold underneath that, so that'll be our rolled hem. It can be as tight of a roll as you want. It can be a loose roll and larger, but it's nice to take the raw edge of the fabric and butt it up against this corner. Use as many clips here as you want, think you need. That should just about do it. Okay, then we're gonna do the same here for the bottom pocket. Remember, you gotta have your right side fold right-sided like this. Right on that 1 inch mark, and do the second fold and fold it underneath. Butt it up against that edge as much as you can. The reason I like having these marks across is you can just easily look and see exactly where it needs to be folded. So it's right here on the edge. I know that I'm folding it correctly because I'm seeing that. And we're done, we're all clipped up. Now we're gonna go over to the Singer machine, our home machine, and we're gonna do a zigzag stitch because that's what's best for the stretch materials. So I'll meet you over there. All right, so we're over here at the Singer, and this is going to be our zigzag machine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our rolled hem that we just made on the Spandura. This is with the bottom pocket, is what I'm gonna start with first. I'm gonna place it under the foot. Now, before I start stitching, I'm gonna make sure exactly the placement of where the needle will be. So on your machine, you can adjust where the needle will go. Mine is just centered right now. And what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna make a stitch. I'm going to crank the hand wheel both directions. So then that's gonna allow me to see exactly where the needle is gonna drop on the leftmost point and the rightmost point. I think that's important to do because you're trying to be as close to this part of the hem, the second fold here, as you can be. So that's what we're gonna work with. Now we're gonna begin the stitch. And perfect, it's just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. That's what we want. Now on this, you're gonna be looking for a wide zigzag because that's gonna have the most stretch. And you're also gonna look for a longer length too. That's gonna allow the stretch to take place. Now this doesn't have to look perfect because this will be hidden. right, done. Pull that piece down, and then we'll grab our other piece. Notice how I didn't cut the thread just then, although you certainly can. I'll be doing it afterwards, just to save a little bit of time. So you don't necessarily have to cut each time you change pieces, especially if it's going to be the same kind of piece. Drop the foot. There we go. Position the needle just how it needs to be. Make sure my length is a little extra long for this part. Perfect. The extra length is going to allow the pocket to expand a lot more than you would expect. Now, if you just have straight stitch, you don't have a machine that's capable of the zigzag, then you can still do this with just a straight stitch, but just go very slowly. The material will definitely move as you work. Great, so we're done. Then we're going to take our snips, snip off our threads here. And then we're done with this machine. All right, so I just grabbed our bottom pocket piece, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna mark again. We're gonna mark a 3/4 inch line, just like so. And that's going to be our stopping place for the bottom pocket. So then, for the pocket itself, you can line up and you'll see that we're pretty darn close. Now, I think what will set us apart here will be at least one roll on the bottom pocket itself. So rolled over one time. And this roll is going to help keep things into the bottom pocket. You can definitely extend the length of the bottom pocket if you want to do more rolls. On my packs that I sell, I definitely do a couple more rolls than this, but I just want to make sure that this is nice and easy. So here we go. We're going to line up on one side. So pick one side first. It's a stretch material, so it's going to move. So we're going to use a special technique here in order to prevent that from happening. Okay. We're going to start clipping along the sides. Notice how there's a little bit of excess here. It's going to stretch and it will fill that excess space. All right, now that we're at our machine, we're at that 3/4 inch mark with the Spandura, and we're going to do a tacking stitch just to keep it on there. Remember, spandex side down, stretchy side down. That's going to allow the machine to actually feed the material. If you don't put it stretchy side down, you're going to have a nightmare because it's going to move around a ton and you're going to be readjusting a ton. So something to keep in mind, stretchy side down almost always if you can manage it. We're going to have a little bit of excess, and that is a-okay. Okay. Then we're going to continue the stitch. We're going to continue the stitch about halfway down the pocket. Reason for that is because this is going to be added on next, the next side, and it can stretch quite a bit during this stage. So it's important that when we finish this, there's room for it to give and for us to pull when we need to. Okay, great. Lined up. Start your tacking stitch. Now, here's an important step is you got to hold your material. As you're working on it, hold it and secure it in your hands. Press it down. That also is helpful. Now, this is the part, and the reason why we stopped halfway through here is once you get down to this corner, you've got to know that it's going to move. So when we've gotten here, we got to stretch as much as we can, eliminate any wrinkles, any folds, anything like that. Now we're looking pretty good. Finish the seam. Now we're going to take some scissors and trim off the excess. The excess is by design because of how stretchy it is. It's going to help us to simply just have a little extra material and not come up short when we're stretching the material. Great, got our excess trimmed off. Don't need to worry about too much excess being trimmed off right now because we'll definitely go back and do that later. Okay, so then we're gonna take these clips off. And there's our bottom pocket added to the bottom panel. Now we've taken our front panel, the one that's gonna have the large stretch pocket, and we're gonna mark 17.5 inches from the bottom. Now this is gonna be the topmost point for our large outer stretch pocket. So go ahead and do that, 17.5. Just a little tick mark will do, and that's all you need. So then we're gonna take that pocket and we're gonna line it up best we can. Now again, this is intended to have excess. The reason for that is it's going to make it a lot easier to just fit it on. You're not gonna have trouble with the stretch of the material. Expect that you'll have a little bit of extra hanging off the bottom. Actually gonna start with this other side. So they'll fit under the machine a little easier. So again, remember, we're gonna be sewing with the stretch side down. That's important to remember. It's gonna make a huge difference in your project and your general frustration here. So that's what the panel is gonna look like. This is our 17.5 inch mark. We're gonna start at the 17.5 inch mark and then take that and sew downwards. So flip the piece, just like that. All right, so we're at our 17.5 inch mark. We're gonna do a tacking stitch close to the edge. Now you can increase your stitch length for these if you wanna reduce the amount of holes. That's a nice thing to do, but not necessary. All right, perfect. Now we're getting close. Now we just got to the bottom corner here and we've got about a 1/4 inch of slack of excess fabric. That's great, that's exactly what we want. Now we're gonna rotate, lift the foot, rotate. And this is already clipped into place. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew about halfway down this panel along the width. Similar to what we did with the bottom pocket, just a much bigger version this time. Make sure it has a little bit of stretch, a little bit of extra hanging out. Good, we're gonna stop right there. Okay, then we're gonna go to our other side here, 17.5 inch mark, make sure that's still correct. Then flip, fold this over so we have a little bit less to work with here, and stick that under the machine. Now that's under the machine, we're gonna do another tacking stitch. Remember, you're just going close to the edge, securing it on there. The main stitching will come later, so don't freak out about that now. It's okay if there's a little excess. Remember, this is stretch fabric. You should probably expect that to be the outcome. All right, great. Now, as we approach this bottom here, we got to make sure that we are stretching appropriately. So I'm going to pull from this corner and just hold it tight and slowly start working. Going down to this corner. Okay, well now we're at the corner. Now do your best to stretch it out, try to eliminate the folds. It's bound to be moving on you, so keep that in mind. It's totally okay. I'm actually not too satisfied with how that turned out, so I'm gonna do a little fix. Time to pull out the seam ripper here. Now, if there's a time to fix things, it's right away. You don't want to wait till you've got more panels together, nothing like that. You want to just, if you got a seam rip, you got a seam rip. So go ahead and get started and do it as soon as you notice the issue. That's gonna help a lot. So I just had a little fold there that I wasn't quite fond of. So we're going to fix that up. And good, it's easily fixed. So all I did was I took out the necessary amount of stitches to get it to lay flat. Then I'm going to stick it back onto the machine. Done. Good, and it lays flat, perfect. So now we've got a lot of excess here. And what we're gonna have to do with that excess is just trim it right off. Take your shears here and let's go ahead and start trimming down the fabric. You want it to be cut as close to the main panel as you can so that you don't confuse yourself later. So next we're going to be marking the top compression strap, and what that's going to be is 19.5 inches from the bottom. So I'm going to take that, line it up on the ruler here, 19.5 inches. You'll notice that that's just 2 inches above your previous pocket. So you can also just do that too. If you don't have a great ruler system, just mark 2 inches right there. Then we're going to take this and we're going to measure across here. And remember, we're just under 12 inches. We're at 11.75, maybe a little extra depending on how you cut your material. So about 6 inches is going to do it for us. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, a lot of this stuff is not a science, it's just guesswork and figuring it out as you go along. So that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to add the top compression strap. We're going to take our compression strap and we're going to fold it in a loop. And that loop, you're going to want, just like this is how you're going to make the loop. You're going to take the loop and you're going to try to center it exactly on that line. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but get as close as you can right in the center. Exactly the position of where you'd want this loop to be. Remember, this is going to go over the pack, and then this is going to be a loop for the front of the bag. So we're going to take it, go to our machine. All right, so now that we've lined up our top compression strap, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start and do a box stitch. Start somewhere in the center there, do a locking stitch. Remember, it's important to do a lot of stitches here because that's going to be a high wear area, so definitely reinforce it with at least double stitching. Then we're going to lift the foot and rotate up to around the top of where we have our raw webbing ending. Lift the foot one more time and do a stitch here. Notice I did about 3 stitches there. Do as much as you want, maybe less depending on the material you're using, but this is pretty strong stuff, so 3 stitches is a good idea. Do that second diagonal. Complete our faux box stitch. It's really just an X with 2 stitches on the top and one on the top, one on the bottom. In order to complete this system, you can use a buckle. You'll have to attach a buckle at the other stage here with the shoulder straps. I like these G hooks because, well, they just seem to work pretty well. So that's what I'll be using. I'll just add that on right now. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do some marking for some extra loops on the front panel and for the side compression. So we're going to go 9.5 inch from the bottom on this front panel and drop a mark. Then we're going to do the exact same thing onto the other side. So right there at 9.5. And then also here at 17.5. So we're going to take our piece of the machine here. We're going to do this exactly. We're going to fold it in a loop. And then we're going to put it right onto the 17.5 inch line. Lift our foot and do a tacking stitch. Perfect. Now we're going to do the 9.5 inch mark. Same thing with the loop. Drop a loop on there. Place it in the center best you can. Put it under. So those are our 2 loops. We're going to do the exact same thing onto the other side. Another loop. Right on the 17.5 inch mark. Right at the top of that rolled hem. And we're going to do the last one right here at 9.5 inch. Perfect. And just like that, all of our loops are done. Next, we're going to be working our shoulder straps. So take the right side to right side of the spacer mesh and line them up with each other. Now I generally start here at the top, and we're going to be sewing it with the spacer mesh side down. So something to consider when you're placing your clips. Now this is one part of the job that I definitely spend a little bit of extra time to get all the clipping done just correctly. Definitely does not hurt to have a little bit of extra clips here to make sure everything stays in place. Spacer mesh is also a little stretchy, and it also can move, so something to keep in mind. Okay, now we're going to put the spacer mesh side down on the machine. Just like that. Put it under the foot. Start with that locking stitch, and then we're going to just start slowly working our way down around the whole strap. Now this first pass, I'm going to go fairly close to the edge, and then we're going to do a second pass, and that will be a little further in. Great, so that's one pass. Make sure you've hit everything on both sides. Make sure you hit the spacer mesh everywhere. And we're gonna go for number 2. So then for this one, I'm gonna go just barely inside of that first one. Could even follow up over the exact same stitch lines, doesn't matter. But I do think it is important to do a second stitch on this part. Remember that you can just stop, lift your foot with the needle down, and rotate every time you need to for these curves. Just go very slowly. You don't have to be able to turn it as it's sewing, but that's a great technique to practice. Great, and that's one strap down. We're going to go ahead and start the second one. Now that we're all clipped in, we're going to do the exact same process one more time. Very nice. Okay. Now our next step here is we're going to take these straps and we're going to flip them inside out. So I start here at the bottom, the closed end, flip it. Once you've got that flip, here's a pro tip. I'm using a curved ruler and I'm sticking it right inside and pushing it. If you have a ruler that you're willing to do this with, it will greatly help you in this stage. You can definitely do it all by hand. The ruler isn't required, but it's definitely nice. Then just start working all of this out. Good, we're flipped. Now we'll do the other side. Perfect, now it's time for our foam. So if you're making this on a home machine, I definitely don't recommend 1/2 inch foam. I would say go to 3/8 inch, go to 1/8 inch, go to something smaller, because the next stage is gonna be really tough on your machine. And if you don't have an industrial walking foot machine, you're definitely gonna struggle. So something to keep in mind. go carefully so you don't break the foam. Can definitely happen. All right, so at this point, the foam is all in the strap. You'll probably have a little bit of excess at the top, and luckily that's very easily removed. Flip this top. Then I'm just gonna eyeball it, but trim about 3/4 inch. And then give it a little push. You can push the foam deeper into the strap this way. Perfect, so then that's gonna give us, say 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of excess that's going to go into the shoulder strap anchor piece. So you want a little bit of excess here, not too much, but enough. And if you do have too much, then it'll be easily hidden. So then I'm gonna take it to the machine and I'm just gonna tack this shut. It's not necessary to do this, but it's a little thing that I like to do. Perfect. So now it's not moving. And then I'll do the next one, and then we can begin working on the daisy chain that's going to hold the sternum strap and the sternum strap itself. So that'll be next, is the little components, but this is one of the straps, and now it's most of the way there. There it is. Here's our 2 straps. I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this top part closed on this other one because I did that for the first. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have these 2 straps, we're gonna begin working on the sternum strap and the daisy chain that is going to go onto this to hold that sternum strap. So let's begin that. Okay, so now that we've got the shoulder straps mostly complete here, we've got the foam inside the sleeve. What we're gonna do next is add the sternum strap. So we're gonna measure about 6.5 inches from the top of the strap. And I'm marking on this side, this was the left strap. I'm actually going to put the sternum strap daisy chain right here along this edge. This is going to allow this buckle and hardware not to hit me and touch my chest while it's on, and it's just going to make a clean result. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to leave it right here on this side on the right for us. On the left strap we're working on. Then we're going to tack either 1 inch, 1.5 inches. You decide for this, depending on how much adjustability you're going to want for your strap, but this is a great place to start. If you're working on a domestic machine, you're gonna have to be very, very careful during this step of where we're tacking down this webbing all the way through the strap. So the strap is gonna be packed fabric, foam, and the spacer mesh. This is why if you're doing this on a domestic home machine, it's definitely recommended to have a thinner foam. The 3/8 inch foam will work a little better. The 1/8 inch foam will definitely be easy for your machine. I'm using a 1/2 inch foam, which is very thick. So I'm gonna have to switch over to the walking foot machine, which is the ultra heavy duty machine, just to get this done. So definitely keep that in mind. You can avoid this step by stitching directly onto the pack fabric of the straps before we did this whole assembly, and that will definitely make it easier. However, this is gonna make the most stable strap, in my opinion, by sewing through all of the layers all the way down this entire daisy chain. So that's what I'm gonna do, and that's what I'm gonna demonstrate. All right, so now we're over here at the tank. We're at the compound feed walking foot machine. This is the heavy duty machine because I've decided to use a lot of thick foam in this project. So we've taken our mark that's 6.5 inches from the top. We're gonna line up, say 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, probably 3/4 inch from the edge here. And then we're gonna very carefully put it underneath the foot. And then we're going to do a lock stitch and begin sewing. So you can go over this as much as you want. I think 3 stitches is probably adequate. That'll definitely keep it all in place, and it's definitely not going to come out. So that's what I'm going to do. Every part of the daisy chain, I'm going to be doing at least 3 stitches, if not more. So then an easy way to keep this going is take a ruler, go to about 1.5 inch. I think that's about the easiest way to do it. 1.5 inch from the top of the webbing, drop another mark. And the reason I'm not doing this all the marking at once is because the webbing is going to move as I'm sewing it. It's going to get a little shorter, so it wouldn't be accurate doing it that way. Do that stitch, pull it out. Now I'll just go ahead and do some trimming here. It's nice to trim in between each stitch because then it won't get in the way of your next one. So next we're going to do another exact same thing. 1.5 inch, drop a tick mark on the webbing. Put it under the foot. Again, if your machine is going to struggle with this, it's going to struggle on this exact part of the entire project. This is the part that'll struggle the most. So if you're really having trouble, go to the hand wheel and crank the hand wheel in order to prevent your needle from breaking. If your needle does break, don't freak out, just don't hurt yourself. All right, keep going here. See, I think we've got about 2 more loops we can possibly do. Another 1.5 inch mark. Drop the foot right on it. Great. Then what we're going to do, no matter how much you have at the end, we're going to do one final loop and tack it down like that. It's always a chore, but you got to do a little bit of trimming here. So take your thread snips or your scissors or whatever you got. Just go ahead and trim up all these ends. There's going to be a lot of them, including on the back. So there we go, there's our daisy chain for the shoulder straps. All right, so we just completed our first daisy chain on the shoulder strap. The next part is we need to add the ladder lock adjuster that's going to be at the bottom. So this is a 4-inch piece of 3/4 inch webbing, 3/4 inch ladder lock. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna place it fairly carefully down here. The exact placement isn't super important, but I will say it is nice to have part of the ladder lock hanging onto the strap, right? So not completely below the strap, but actually slightly above the edge. And the reason for that is it's just going to have less wear on you, like you're not going to touch it nearly as much. So that's just something to keep in mind. We're going to angle it with the strap. The strap is angled, of course, at the very bottom. So we're going to try to stick with that angle as we put this on. Okay, so now that we've got that one stitch, we're gonna do is we're gonna do another box stitch. So we're gonna take this strap, we're gonna take the strap right here, and we're going to rotate it and sew as close as we can to the hardware without hitting the hardware. Okay, just like that. And then we're going to lift up our foot and then do a couple forwards and backs here. Then we're going to stop, pick up the foot one more time, do another rotate. And then just like that, it's on. So this is our completed strap for the moment. This is our daisy chain, which we will attach the sternum strap, which we'll be working on next after the straps. And then this is the 4-inch piece of 3/4 inch webbing that is folded over onto itself and created a loop here for our ladder lock adjuster. Now this is a complete strap, and it's time to do the next one. And those are our 2 shoulder straps. Now there's definitely ways you can improve these, and I'll leave that up to you, but this is a great starting point for comfortable shoulder straps that are approximately 3 inches wide. So they're gonna be great on your shoulders. You've got a lot of places here for your sternum straps, you can adjust it, and you're definitely going to have less agitation by having the hardware slightly raised off of the strap. If you had it below the strap, it would definitely come into contact with you a little bit more. So that's why I recommend this method, and I think these straps will turn out great for our pack. All right, so next we're gonna make the webbing handle, like the hull handle, that is going to go into the shoulder straps or right above the shoulder straps. So this is an 8-inch piece of webbing, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna mark at 1 1/4 inch with our chalk. And then we're gonna take our clips and we're gonna do a fold. So this is not necessarily a required step. This is more just an aesthetic step. It kind of gives it a nicer look to have this handle. You can simply just throw a piece of webbing in there, no problem. But I think this is a great little solution, and you see a lot of the cottage companies making their handles this way. So this is what we're gonna do. So we're gonna clip exactly like this. We're going to sew from chalk line to chalk line, just like this. Then we're going to do one more stitch right here. So after the first stitch, you do a second stitch just to give it a little bit more rigidity and strength. All right, so then just like that, we've got a handle. So then you're gonna have to assemble a couple other pieces here. You're gonna have the handle, then you're gonna have a 5-inch piece of 3/4 inch webbing. You're gonna loop it just like this. And then you're also going to have a 2.5 inch piece of 3/4 inch grosgrain ribbon and hold it like this. So next we need to measure for torso length. So the torso length is going to be the measurement from the bottom of the pack to where the straps come out. And for this, what you're going to need to do is take your torso length and -3. So for this example, I'm going to make a bag with a 19-inch torso length. So I'm going to subtract by 3. That means I need to measure by 16 inches from the bottom. So I measure 16 inches from the bottom, and I do a little tick mark. And what that represents is the bottom of where this piece is going to attach to the back panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold right here on the shoulder strap anchor piece, right onto the chalk line. It's going to be a 1/2 inch fold. No need for a double fold, just one fold. If you're working with something stiff, then it'll stay in place. If not, you may need to clip it. For this, I'm not going to have to clip it. So then we're going to line up here right along with the bottom of that tick mark. Then we're going to clip in place. You see that, how we've clipped into place? Now, this is going to be where we sew across to attach this piece, and then after that, we're going to stitch this, which will also be folded with the shoulder straps in it. So, that's how we're going to begin with that lateral width stitch. Okay, so now we're going to do that width stitch all the way across. Remember to keep it lined up. Make sure that it lays flat, and then begin with a locking stitch. Then we're going to just very slowly and carefully walk all the way across. Now for this one, I'm going to go as close to the fabric edge as I can. Okay, and then we're going to do a second stitch and line this up on your machine however you need to or however you see fit. But it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to line up with the rightmost part of my foot as the first stitch, so then this will be an adequate distance away. So now we've got both of these stitches complete, and the next thing for us is going to be folding this material. So we've already marked this with our chalk. We're gonna have to just do a nice little fold here. Remember, start with the diagonal sides first. Diagonal side, fold. Yep. Okay, and then once both of those are folded, then we can do the top fold. So it's important that you have these diagonal sides folded down first. And I'm going to use a clip here just to keep things in place. And do the same on the other side. Okay, good. And then carefully do a crisp fold right at the top. So our next part is a little tricky here. This is where we're going to have to secure the shoulder straps into their place. So I'm going to make sure that there's no excess fabric here, because remember, I closed these off. So make sure it's a nice clean edge. And do the same on this one. The cleaner your edges are while you're working, the easier it's going to be to see everything as you're sewing it. So that's what we're going to do. So here we go. This is our first strap. We're going to just place it upside down in this orientation. Now you're going to want at least a 1/2 inch, if not 3/4 inch, of the strap to be underneath this anchor fabric, the orange material. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that the strap will not pull out. You're also going to want to be about 1/4 inch from this corner, just so that you have a fair amount of space in between the straps. You don't want to be too close or else it'll rub your neck. So get it as close as you can to that foam. All right, so it's time for the first strap. Remember to go very slowly here. It's also smart to do some reverse stitching to reinforce this part. This is going to be where it's going to take most of the load. So stitch close to the edge as much as you can. Double stitch as much as you can over those corners. And that's going to make sure you have a durable bag. Okay, so that's one strap in. Now this is where it can get a little tricky. So the next part here is you're going to want to add your handle. So for your handle, place these flat parts down and right on the corner. If you place them down and right on the corner of both sides at the top of this anchor piece, it'll go very smoothly. So then, remember to do some reverse stitching to reinforce it. All right. Now, it's important that you don't miss this step because this is going to be for the top compression strap. So at this point, what we're going to have to add is we have this 5-inch piece of 3/4 inch webbing, and then we have a 2.5 inch piece of 3/4 inch grosgrain ribbon. So that's going to be the next step here. Basically right where this clip was, it'll be important here. So take a loop, fold this over itself, place it in the middle as best you can. Doesn't have to be exact, folks. Perfect, place it in the middle. Then this is where it can get a little tricky and where you might need an extra hand is take your loop and also thread this right on top of that original webbing loop. So if you get them right on top of each other, it should look pretty good. You slowly stitch over it. All right. Then we need to prepare that next side of the handle, which is going on next. Then we have our final bit here, which will be the next shoulder strap. So I'm going to place that carefully. Luckily, most of this is already sewn down, so it's a little bit easier to do this than the first one. Okay, perfect. That's the right spacing. And then slowly go over it. And I mean slow. Good, and then close it out and we're done. Part of your sewing foot, and then just carefully go through one more time. Be sure to double stitch again. And there we go. So that's what that should look like with your shoulder straps attached. Here they are. We're going to flip them down. And this is actually a fairly strong method of attaching shoulder straps. I was very surprised by that. And if you just have a lightweight load, it definitely won't pull out on you. So that's nothing you should be worried about. I think this is a great method. As you can see, I'm pulling on it pretty hard. And they're not coming out. So there's definitely other ways you can reinforce this, but I think this is a great method that is really beginner friendly. So this is what I'm going to recommend to you that you do for your pack. Okay, so now that the shoulder straps are on, we're going to mark a couple other loops of webbing. And the first is going to be at 14.5 inch. This is right on the back panel. We're going to do it on both sides. Okay, great. 14.5, and then we're also going to mark right in the middle here. So since this is about 12 inches, it's 11.75, but it's almost 12 inches. You can basically decide to move it around your ruler and go to 6 inch and drop a mark there. Okay, so then we're going to add more grosgrain loops to all those locations, and that's going to give us a great place to attach whatever we want to the bag. I'm going to start here with this bottom loop, tack this on. We've got 2 more side loops here. All right, so once you've marked at 3/4 inch from the bottom of the back panel, this is exactly where we're gonna put our 3-inch pieces of 1-inch webbing for our hip belt, and also we're gonna put our anchors for the straps. So we're gonna put the anchors aside for a minute, and we're gonna put the hip belt webbing on. So all you need to do is line it up with the top of that mark. Remember, it's just a tack stitch, doesn't have to be perfect. And we're gonna do the exact same thing with the other side. Great. Okay, now that that's on, we're gonna take our anchors and we're gonna position it so the webbing side ends right at that mark, and then we're also going to put it so the other edge is right up here with the edge of the fabric. Same thing with the other side. All right, and we're going to flip it over. And we're going to sew those anchors on. Great, now we're going to do the other side. Take some scissors and trim that off. Smart to hit it with a lighter. Great. And now I think our back panel is complete. It's just like that. We have our anchors, the straps on, all of our loops. We're pretty much ready to go and start the final assembly. All right, so at this point, what we need to do is we need to take all of our big pieces that we've now done all in sub-assemblies. We need to make them all one. So we need to basically start with the back panels and the side panels, and we're gonna start joining those two together. I think that's the most important thing to do, is to have those pieces connected, and then we'll go on and add this later, the front panel with the large pocket, and then lastly we'll do the bottom. So that's what we're gonna start with. So we're gonna take one of the side panels, line it up here at the corners, take some of your clips and start clipping it together. And you'll probably want to clip all the way up the entire length. Okay, so that should line up pretty nicely. And then we're going to take that over to the machine and do a 3/8 inch seam allowance seam all along this entire piece. All right, so now that this is all clipped together, we're going to take the seam and start it at the bottom. Everything is all lined up perfectly. Remember, we're doing 3/8 inch. If it's not perfect, that's not the end of the world, but it definitely will help. So definitely start with the locking stitch and then slowly work your way up. Great. So now that's on. Okay, so now that this side piece is on, I'm gonna do a flat felt stitch. Now this is an optional step. It definitely is a little more challenging and you're adding more layers that you need to sew through, but flip it over, check out your pack, look at how those seams went together. If anything's wrong, go ahead and fix it right now. Now's the time to fix it. If you're good to go, then what you're gonna wanna do, flip it right side down, and then fold, make sure the fold is inward towards the back panel. In our case, that is teal. Fold is inward. So then, this is where it gets tricky because you have big pieces. Make sure that fold is correct. Put it under the machine just like that. And you're going to be doing another stitch. Now, it's important to consider that you are not seeing the other side of the fabric. So you need to make sure that while you're doing this, all the little bits of webbing and whatever are not going to get caught. The pocket, the side pocket is not going to get caught as you're doing the stitch. So yeah, that's definitely an important consideration. Makes it a little tricky, but you can easily get away without doing the stitch, but it will add a lot of strength to the seam. So I think it's worth doing and at the very least demonstrating. So just go very slowly. You're gonna have to wrangle your straps and move everything around to some extent to do this, but I promise it's worth it. Great. So now, as you can see, there's that black stitch line running all the way across the bag, all the way down the back panel. It's on the interior too. That's something important to note. It's on the back panel. That's just the way that we folded it. And that's going to improve the strength quite a bit of our bag. So then next we're gonna have to do the exact same thing mirrored on the other side. So let me go get the other panel and then I'm going to clip it onto here and then we'll do the same thing. All right, now we've got our second side panel clipped on here. We put it under the foot. 3/8 inch seam allowance, remember. Stick it under the foot. Start with a lock stitch, as you always should, but especially now. Now remember, this is going to be very bulky, so you're going to have to literally wrestle it while you work. Okay, great. Now I've got a little bit of excess here, so I'm going to trim that off. Now it's time to trim. It's also the time to hit stuff with a lighter if you haven't yet. If you thought the first one was hard, the second one's even harder because you've got even more material. So fold that over, fold that first piece over. Line it up, make sure the fold is going inwards towards our back panel, which is my teal panel. Make sure no straps are in the way, nothing that's gonna get caught in the stitch. And we're gonna work our way up. Remember, folding towards the back panel. We just gotta be consistent. Okay. Nice. Okay, now that all these have been flat felled, now it's time to add the next panel. We need to add the front panel. Got the front panel, and I clipped it to one of the side panels. Again, we're going to do a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Lock stitch, of course. Now this seam and the next one are not going to be flat felled. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm just going to run a second line of stitching actually to the right, so in the seam allowance, just to reinforce it and give it a little bit of extra strength. So another thing you can do here is, since we're not going to do a flat felled seam, I'm also not going to grosgrain bind this either. I'm just going to hit it with a lighter. All right, very good. Okay, now that we've got that, we've got the front panel to the last side panel, and we're going to clip that together. And now the side panel, the last one, and the front panel clip together. Start our stitch. Then we're going to do the same thing and run a second stitch here, just for a little bit of extra strength. Great. So now we have all the panels here, and we need to add the bottom panel. So depending on how you want your bottom pocket to face, I want it to face to the right. What I'm going to do is imagine the pack was on, this is the back panel, this is the bottom pocket. So I want it to be facing in this direction, so to the left. So for this part here, you're going to want to leave about 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch, whatever you have excess. Don't sew all the way past the corner. You're going to need to leave that slack so that you can have a little bit of room to move the material whenever we're moving to the side pockets and sewing those together to the bottom. So that's something to keep in mind here. Otherwise, we're going to do a stitch fairly close to the edge here. Not a tacking stitch, but very close. Remove all these clips. And this is the other side of what I was talking about here. You need to leave about 1/4 inch. You just need to make sure that you're not stitching past the panel, and I'm pretty much right on it. So that's pretty much where I want to stop. See how we have that little bit of excess? I probably should have gone about 1 more stitch, so maybe I'll go back and fix that. So just like that, you want to make sure that you're not going onto the side panel, you just want to stay on the back panel. All right, now we're going to do a second stitch just to the left of that, not too far away, and that'll just be a little bit of extra assurance. Great. So now, bottom pocket and the bottom panel are attached to the back panel. And the next course of action here is we're going to take side panels, making sure to kind of fold that up and having a little bit of excess on the other edge to where it gets to the front panel, so you have like maybe 1/4 inch. Now this can definitely be a tricky part, so take your time here. And keep in mind it doesn't matter too much if you get some folds here at the corners, because we had a flat felt seam there, so it's kind of a bulky seam. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not a huge deal if you get that. All right, once that's nice and tidy with your clips, go ahead and stick it under the machine. Do a single stitch, put everything together. Remember to stop so that you only get that side panel. And we're gonna do one more. Great. Now we're gonna do the other side here. Same exact process. When you're clipping these together, just try to make sure you have as little folding as possible. It's kind of hard to avoid folding, but it's nice to reduce it if you can, so something to keep in mind. All right, so now we're clipped together. Move everything out of the way. Good, looks about right. And we're gonna do one more stitch again, just for the extra strength. Perfect. Now our last bit here is going to be the front panel connected to the bottom panel. So if you've done everything correctly to this point, it should line up fine. You should have exactly the amount of material that you need. If not, you know, definitely just do the best you can with your current situation. At this point, it's hard to go through and unpick everything if you had to, but if you made it this far, you've probably gotten pretty darn close, and you could probably finish your bag, so that's something to keep in mind. Give it a flip. All right, now that we're here at the end, I'm going to take all the clips off. Make sure we get the right. Yep. Just want to make sure that I got the right amount of no folding and everything is together how it should be. And we're doing pretty good. So now I'm going to do one more stitch on that last part. It's tricky because this is where it's the bulkiest. Okay, so we are mostly done now. All the main panels are together. We have basically only a couple more tasks to do. We need to close the roll top, and then we also need to make the hip belt and the sternum strap, but otherwise we're doing pretty darn good. All right, so you've made it to the best part of the process. Now, we need to take our tube here and flip it inside out, and we'll see what our pack looks like. So stick your hand all the way through. Pull the straps out first. Then grab the bottom and pull it. All right, so this is what our bag looks like at the moment. Give it a spin, give it a spin. So all the pieces are now together. And what we have left to do is basically just little finishing touches here and there. So we're gonna have to add the elastic to the pockets. We're going to add the side compression cord. We're going to stitch together all the little bits and bobs so that they don't fall out of the hardware. And we're gonna complete the roll top. And after that, we're done. So now we're gonna work on the sternum strap. So I've taken the 4.5 inch piece of 1/2 inch webbing and I've threaded it through both ends of one end of this Molly webbing clip, which will be removable hardware. So that'll be a nice feature. And then the other part is a single side release buckle. It's one way adjustable. So then we're gonna take it like this, stick it under the machine and give it a stitch. And we're going to do a box stitch here. Go back around the other way. So that's one part here. Then the other part is also going to be attached to one of these Molly clips. And we're just going to make a loop like this and stitch it on there. All right, so now that that's on there, all we need to do is thread this webbing through the buckle. Just like that, and then we have one more stitch. So take your raw edge stitch, flip it over once, and it's done. So that is the sternum strap. Okay, so now we're going to work on the 1-inch removable hip belt. So this is a 1-inch strip of webbing that's 15 inches long, and we're also using these slit clips. You can use any form of hardware, but this is my preferred. It's the lightest. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one fold over, create a loop with the slit clip in it. It's about 1 inch long. Doesn't matter too much. Right, so now that's stitched on there. Do one more on the other side, and take note that it's going to be reversed. It's going to be mirrored, I guess. So now that we've got that done, so now that we have these bits done, we need one 1-inch dual adjust buckle. Thread these raw edges through. And then we're just going to do a single fold over and stitch it down. Same on the other side. And that's the hip belt. Very simple, very easy, and definitely effective. Removable, so when you don't need it, you don't need to have it on the pack. Okay, so now that the pack is almost done, we've got to finish up the roll top. And the best way to do that, take a ruler and mark 1 1/4 inch from the raw edge at the very top of the roll top. This is going to be the mark where we fold and do a rolled hem all the way across, and that's going to give us a nice clean look at the top. So yeah, definitely take your time with that and go slowly when you're actually doing the folding part of the process here, but marking is obviously self-explanatory. Okay, so I've dropped it down to the floor just so I could easily access the whole thing that I need to fold here. So fold down right on the chalk mark, do another fold right below it, put a clip on there, and repeat that the entire circumference. Okay, so now that we have folded over and clipped the entirety of the roll top, our next step is we're going to do a stitch all the way across it. Now the stitch, you want to be as far as you can to the left here of the rolled hem. And just rotate the bag as you're working on it. All right, just like that, the roll top is just about done. And next we're going to add some buckles. In order to do this properly, it's best to line up as best you can all your panels. So if you look at my seams here, notice that I'm putting them right on top of each other, the side seams that is. And then I'm going to separate our buckle, because you just need one. This is the 3/4 inch adjustable buckle, one single side adjustable. Thread the webbing through on both real quick. Then you're going to point it the same direction, of course. That's what you are intending to do here. Point it in the same direction, and then fold the webbing onto itself, and then stick a couple clips right here to hold it in place. And then we're going to stitch that on, and then that's going to close the roll top. Okay, then we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, great. Now, all we have to do is stitch those on. So now you have to be very careful because we've got a lot of pack here and we're almost done. Carefully fold it out of your way and stitch these bits of webbing on. Lift, fold, turn again, and that's one side done. It's definitely helpful if you're worried about going too far. You can always mark right where that second clip was because that's where we're going to want to stop it. Won't make too much difference, but it is a nice thing to do if you're worried about going too far with your stitch. Great, now lift, turn. Lift and turn. And it's done. So you can get a good visual of that. We've got one more bit to finish here with the webbing, the top compression strap. We're just going to take that, fold it, put it under the machine, finish it off. All right, so our final bit here is just going to be threading our anchors through the straps. Of course, I got a dog hair on there. Pull that through. The same for this side. Pull it through, remove your dog hairs. Okay, so now we're all threaded, good. Now you're going to do the same thing we've done before with finishing the webbing. You're just going to take the end, the raw edge, flip it once, stitch it. That side's done. This side we're going to do the same thing. That side's done. All right, great. Now we can start to attach little bits here that we've been waiting to attach, because now that we're done with sewing, we might as well. So our first bit here is we're going to take our slit clip, thread it through the webbing loop at the bottom, clip it in. Do the same thing for the other side. Clip it in, lock it down, and the belt's done. Great. Now for the sternum strap, we're going to be doing essentially the same thing. We're going to go to the left side, put this wherever you see it to be necessary, wherever it's going to be most comfortable for you. Slip it through just like that. Lock it in. It locks in just like the slit clip does. I'm going to go to the other side. Do the exact same process again. Thread through one, move it up, thread through the second, and it's in. Sternum strap is done. Now we just have a couple more finishing bits and we'll be complete. All right, so now that that's out of the way, we need to do our elastic cord. So I've got some shot cord here. And what I'm planning to do is, because we have 3 different bits here, we can do a zigzag and we can put a cord lock, and that's going to allow us to compress the bag and put stuff onto the sides of the bag and secure it down. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start out like this, and to get the length, this is a little trick I've picked up here. Grab your clips, leaving a little bit of excess there, and you can simply clip all the way along. That's going to give you the exact amount that you need. So I did that. Clip, 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 all off. I'll measure it real quick. 18 inches. So then I'll take my second piece and I'll cut that out at 18 inches. Then you're going to want to take both. Hit them with a lighter. All right, now it's time to start threading it through. So I'm going to start up here, and my plan is this: cord lock through one side. This is a great way to use minimal hardware and still have some adjustability here. All right, so the cord lock's through. Then I'm going to hold the cord lock open, and then I'm going to push the other end through. All right, now that that's through, tie a quick overhand knot. That's just to prevent it from slipping out. Okay, done. Then take it through this loop right here and finish it out at this bottom loop. Then tie another overhand knot right here. Perfect. So now we have side compression, and you'll just repeat the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll also go through and give it a quick trim, both sides. And I'll hit it with a lighter. All right, next, and I think finally, is going to be our adjustments here for the side pockets. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. I think the easiest is probably to tie a knot here. Well, let's clip it, get the length first. And I have enough for a knot. The other side here. Okay, great. That length was 13 inch. So I'm going to take another piece of shot cord, cut it at 13 inch. Hit it with a lighter. So now that we've got our elastic cord and our cord locks, we're going to pop out those 1/2 inch webbing tabs. We're going to tie in the elastic cord right on one of those tabs with a double knot. Then we're going to slowly start to feed it through. Now the best way to do this is to use a long skinny piece. I'm using a diamond file that I have, but a chopstick or a similar sized object would work the same. Tie the cord around the edge, the end of the long skinny piece with a piece of tape, and then just start threading it through the channel the best that you can. Definitely be sure to go slow here, and once you get through the other side, pull it out and then remove the cord from the tape. Now that the cord is out the other side, we're going to thread it through the webbing, and then we're going to stick a cord lock on the other end, pull it tight through, and then do an overhand knot. And just like that, we're done. Now repeat on the other side pocket. I really hope you enjoyed this DIY backpack tutorial and found it to be useful and that you learned some. This is my final bag, taking it out for a test walk. Please be sure to send me your finished DIY backpacks. I'd love to post any photos you may take on Instagram and the other social media platforms. Thank you again for following this tutorial. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it was useful and taught you some about sewing your own backpack. If you have any pictures or videos of you using your DIY 30-liter backpack, be sure to send them to me on Instagram at redpawpacks. I would love to share them and show everyone else what you've made.